Hi guys, welcome to my Cultural Plunge assignments. So today I'll be interviewing, or I have already interviewed. So this is my grandmother. So this is Julia Atana, also known to me as my nonna. She is born on the 18th of November 1946. She was born and raised in Messignati, Calabria, Italy. She moved to Australia at the age of 20 and for the reason of seeking a better life. She got married in Italy, then had 3 kids in Adelaide, and now is a grandmother to 6 beautiful kids. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her move to Australia. So back in those days, she was saying to me that you couldn't just move to Australia for any plain old reason, and you couldn't just say, I'm seeking a better life. So she actually needed to be in an arranged marriage to move over to Australia so that she could have a reason to move over here. So the way it worked is that my nonno, so her husband, her arranged marriage husband, moved to Australia first, and set up a life for them, got a house, got a job, blah, blah, blah. And then she moved down to him in a couple of years later, and they started a life here. But so she couldn't just move down here just because she was seeking a life. She needed a reason, and I'll go into that a little bit more in the following slides. So to get to know kind of where she was from and kind of the life she lived, I asked her about her hometown and kind of how different it was to Australia and her life here. So a little bit about Messignati. So it's situated in the heart of Reggio Calabria. It has about 1,183 people. So that's the population so far, and that was calculated in 2011. So they're popular for their expansion of century-old olive trees. So people travel from far and wide to see these olive trees and how they, invest in them, crop, and they preserve them to the city and stuff like that. And also their views. So as you can see in the top right corner, you can see my grandmother standing beside the picturesque views there are in Messignati. It's becoming a lot more of a travel destination rather than a city and a crowd. They're really popular for that kind of thing, but they're still quite a rundown city. So as you can see here, they're, very like something you would see in Australia many years ago, like very rundown, very, not very updated, stuff like that. So that's how it is now. And those pictures were taken by my nonna about 2 years ago. So, next one. So, after asking her multiple questions about, her identity and what she believes has shaped it and, her schooling experiences, I cut it down to 4 types of things that she finds that influences her still to this day in her identity and her schooling. So her family, so in particular her mother and father, and how she brings those influences from her mother and father into her own family and her own, generations down and stuff like that. So her experience of migrating and, her struggles she had to deal with, fitting in and settling in here. And then particularly with schooling, religion and culture. So being a Catholic young Italian woman in the heart of Reggio Calabria and coming to Australia, of course. So influences family. So in particular, her mother and father. So her mother always encouraged her to do her best in everything. She was always someone that, told her, make sure you go to school, make sure you, get a job, do the stuff you need to do. She was always a fantastic woman who just encouraged Julia throughout her whole existence. Well, she's still alive, but, just constantly encouraged her to do her best. Her mother was the person that instigated her move to Australia. So she actually lied to the department saying that, she was getting married. Well, she did get married, like an arranged marriage, but the reason why she really did move to Australia was because she needed to find a job, get some money for herself, build a family in somewhere that's, safe and protected. And Italy wasn't like that at the time, so her mother was just like, you need to move, and they moved. So the reason they gave was to get married, so she needed to get married to move down to here, but really she just needed a job. She wanted to start a life. So so her mother was like to her, you need to move down to Australia. So she did, and her mother, booked her the plane ticket or whatever she did. She didn't really give me a lot of information of how she got down here, but she definitely moved down here to find a job and to find a better life. So her mother always taught her the skills she uses today, such as cooking, sewing, and mothering. And as you can see down below, one of the pictures is her cooking. That's something she told me that something her mother taught her. All these recipes that she cooks for her family, it's all her mother. And she loves, bringing it down to Australia and just embracing it here. Her culture, her heritage, it's all in her cooking, and that's what she says. And also sewing helped her to help Julia to find her first job in Australia. So she was a seamstress, I think that's what you call it, for one of the biggest companies in Australia. I'm not sure, she didn't say what it was, but I knew she was a seamstress. And her father. So Julia's father was strict on her. As an Italian background family, generally most Italian people are quite strict, and they want to stick to culture and tradition. So that's what her father did. So her father always took her to church, school, and special occasions within the city. And Julia said she didn't like it at when she was younger, but now she reflects on it, saying that Julia learnt that where she was from and kind of the beliefs that stood in society. So she thanks her father for sometimes being a little bit strict on her, because she wouldn't have been able to talk about her, her culture, her heritage, unless it wasn't for her father. So now she brings on those traditions. She brings them home here to Australia and shares them with, us, the grandkids, and, the kids, her kids as well. So in the bottom corner, we can see that, that's my cousins and my auntie, my uncle, and that's her cooking. So an experience. So Julia migrating down to Australia was quoted by her stressful, exhausting, and terrifying. So she moved down here easily. However, she missed her hometown and the kind of vibe it gave her. And during the first couple of years staying here, she really did want to go back home, but she knew she needed to be in Australia for a better life. So one of her biggest struggles was the language barrier. Of course, with anybody moving down from a different country, learning a new language is very difficult, and she needed to actually learn English very fast so that she could, find a job and communicate with others and fit into the community. So eventually, with the help of her family, she learnt basic English, and also once she properly settled into Australia, she learnt from the locals, and finding friends helped her also, communicate with them and stuff like that, and they learnt English altogether, because it wasn't just her coming down from Australia at that time. Coming down from Italy at that time was a lot of her friends. So a lot of her friends came down. They both kind of worked together to, learn English. Learn different traditions. And just really get to know where she was living. So with this in mind, she now talks about how she sympathises with the crisis of refugees and immigrants, as she understands the struggle and how devastating and the moving is. She was talking about how she really wants to help them. She wants to do something for them, but she knows that she probably couldn't, or stuff like that. But she was really sad about kind of talking about this and talking about refugees and the immigrants that are coming down from different countries that have it harder than her. So another influences she has on her own identity and schooling was her religion and her culture. So both these influences served both strengths and weaknesses, mostly in regards to education. So religion, so Julia and her family are Catholic, so that it's mostly the main belief in her country. So mostly throughout Italy and, you know, surrounding towns are all Catholic. You know, some of the festivals they have there are just like for saints and stuff like that. So yeah, they're just for saints and stuff like that. Sorry, my camera went weird. So she's still very involved in her faith and aims to uphold her religion in everyday life. In school, her religion was not a positive outlet, as she remembers a time she was bullied for praying before her food, which is really sad, because I would believe that these days people wouldn't be bullied for things like that. But obviously back then, when it was just, we weren't used to religion, yeah, she was bullied for praying before her food, which is something she remembers vividly. Also her culture, so her cultural background. So Julia is Italian and so is her family. So in school, her culture played a major part in her education. So generally the Italian culture is quite strict, and because of this, Julia was not allowed to go out with her friends or engage in any social activity. This included school camps and excursions, and Julia explains that she missed out on the fundamentals of interacting with others, which is also quite sad as well. But as she said in earlier slides, that it helped her, understand her heritage and culture and stuff like that, especially in schools where she, got to know other people from a multicultural background and stuff like that. So yes, that's some influences. So I'm just going to reflect on my own identity in relation to the reading. So in week 2, the new questions and for contemporary teachers taking a socio-cultural approach to education. So I just found this reading bringing awareness to the term of othering and how we can actually it looks into the legal and legislative notion of discrimination in the light of anti-discrimination laws in Australia. But most importantly, what I really got out of this was it informs educators and pre-service teachers about the forms of racism and discrimination that we may not be aware of, such as, pointing out a race or pointing out something that is different in somebody. It should be actually embraced and given a lot of light to and stuff like that. So as a pre-service teacher, I aim to kind of be much more aware of these racist or discriminative practices and kind of eliminate them from the classroom. And a week 3 reading, so the pre-service learning and social justice. So in this chapter, I read that it outlines the concepts of the self and how the concepts of our self of self can actually promote social change within our society. So talking about that, there was a particular paragraph talking about white privilege in that, and it was talking about how, our privilege as white people can actually promote a social change. And one of the lines said, sometimes we need to understand our social privilege so we can get off our seat and let others take a seat. And I thought that was really powerful to know that, sometimes we can lend our power for good. And I thought it was really important to know that. So just some concluding remarks. So I would like to say a big thank you to my nonna for letting me do this. I'm very glad I had this opportunity to do this assignment, so as I'm now well aware of my nonna's past and how fortunate I am to be living in such an incredible country. So yes, here's a picture of me and my nonna, and I just thank you all for watching, and I'm so glad that you got to know my nonna and where she's from and stuff like that. So thank you so much.